A section of overhead cable runs along the edge of a low building, just above a narrow service alley. The insulation is slightly worn where it bends around a metal bracket. Over several weeks, a thin, repeating pattern appears along that bend, small, shallow grooves spaced irregularly, as if something returns to the same spot, and applies pressure in short bursts. The marks do not spread evenly along the wire. They cluster where the cable changes direction, where tension is higher, and where the surface is more exposed. The animal responsible is not present most of the time. When it does appear, the interaction is brief. It approaches along the edge of the wall, pauses near the bracket, grips the cable, and begins to chew. The behavior lasts seconds to minutes, then stops. It may return later, or not at all that day. Over time, however, the marks accumulate. This pattern does not emerge randomly. It appears where access is predictable, where the cable is stable enough to support weight, and where repeated contact is possible without extended exposure. The behavior is intermittent, but consistent in location. The action itself, chewing, is not limited to electrical wires. The same animal engages in similar behavior on tree bark, wooden beams, plastic edges, and occasionally metal-coated surfaces. The choice of object varies, but the structure of the behavior remains stable. Approach, grip, repeated biting, disengage. The cable, in this context, is not selected because of what it is, but because of what it offers. It is elevated, fixed, and reachable through established movement paths. It does not move away. It does not collapse under weight. It remains available over time. From a behavioral standpoint, the chewing does not require the object to provide immediate nutritional value. The interaction is not evaluated in the same way as food acquisition. Instead, it follows a different constraint. Set one that prioritizes continuous engagement with resistant materials. The animal's teeth grow continuously. This creates a persistent condition. Surfaces must be engaged regularly to maintain functional length and shape. If this interaction is delayed or inconsistent, the cost accumulates. The structure of the teeth begins to interfere with normal feeding and handling behaviors. Within this constraint, the animal does not wait for specific materials to appear. It engages with what is available within its movement range. Tree bark is common in some areas, but not all. Wooden structures may be present, but their distribution is irregular. Synthetic materials like cable, insulation introduce new surfaces into the environment that meet similar resistance conditions. The cable's outer layer provides a consistent texture. It resists initial pressure but yields under repeated force. This balance between resistance and eventual deformation aligns with the behavioral requirement. The goal is not to remove the material entirely, but to maintain contact long enough to produce wear. The selection process, then, is shaped less by preference and more by availability and accessibility. If a suitable surface exists within a frequently traveled path, it becomes part of the behavioral loop. In the case of overhead wiring, several factors converge. The cables are often routed along edges that animals already use: roof lines, fences, narrow ledges. These routes minimize ground exposure and provide continuous pathways between feeding and resting areas. The wire becomes integrated into these paths, not as a destination, but as part of the structure. When the animal pauses along the route, the opportunity to engage with the cable is immediate. There is no need to descend, search, or alter direction significantly. The cost of interaction is low. Over time, repeated low-cost interactions accumulate into visible damage. This pattern is not uniform across all cables. It concentrates where movement slows down: corners, junctions, points of transition between surfaces. These are locations where the animal naturally pauses to reassess direction or balance. The pause creates a window for additional behavior, including chewing. The behavior does not appear to be driven by exploration alone. It persists even after the material has been previously engaged. This suggests that the value lies not in discovering the object, but in reusing it as a reliable surface for repeated action. In environments where natural materials are abundant and continuously renewed, such as areas with dense vegetation, this behavior distributes across multiple surfaces. No single object receives concentrated attention. In more structured environments, where surfaces are fewer and more stable, the behavior converges. Electrical wires, once introduced, become one of these convergence points. The consequences of this interaction are not directly accounted for within the behavior itself. The animal does not adjust based on the function of the cable, the internal structure, whether it carries current or Knot is not part of the observable decision process. The interaction is limited to surface level engagement. However, the outcome of repeated chewing can extend beyond the initial behavior. As insulation degrades, the underlying material becomes exposed. This can alter the resistance profile of the surface, sometimes making it less suitable for continued engagement. In some cases, the cable becomes less stable or more hazardous. From the animal's perspective, these changes may reduce the attractiveness of the surface over time. If the resistance decreases too much, or if the structure becomes unstable, the behavior shifts elsewhere. The system self-adjusts not through foresight, but through feedback from the interaction itself. This feedback loop does not require an understanding of the broader consequences. It operates at the level of immediate physical response, how the material feels under repeated pressure, how long it holds before changing, how easily it can be gripped. In this sense, the behavior is not about wires specifically. It is about maintaining a necessary interaction. Within the constraints of the environment, the wire becomes relevant only when it fits those constraints. Alternative surfaces are evaluated in the same way. If a wooden beam offers similar resistance and is equally accessible, the behavior may shift. If tree bark is abundant and easier to reach, it may dominate the interaction pattern. The presence of wires does not eliminate other options. It adds another node to the network of available surfaces. What determines which node is used more frequently is not a fixed preference, but a dynamic balance between effort, exposure, and outcome. In areas with higher human infrastructure, the number of stable, elevated surfaces increases. This changes the distribution of interaction points. Wires, pipes, and structural edges create a layered environment, where movement and behavior can occur above ground level. Within this layer, certain objects like cables offer both pathway and surface. The dual function increases the likelihood of repeated contact. At the same time, the risks associated with these objects are not always immediately apparent. Electrical current, for example, is not consistently detectable through surface interaction alone. The behavior does not incorporate avoidance based on invisible properties. As a result, the same process that maintains functional teeth can occasionally lead to unintended outcomes. Despite this, the behavior persists across individuals and environments. The cost of not engaging in surface chewing is more immediate and predictable than the potential risk associated with any single object. From a viability perspective, maintaining the ability to process food outweighs the occasional hazard presented by certain materials. This trade-off does not eliminate risk, but it stabilizes the behavior across varying conditions. Returning to the cable along the service alley, the pattern of wear continues to develop over time. The grooves deepen slightly, then plateau. The animal does not remove the entire outer layer in one session. Instead, it returns intermittently, each time contributing a small increment to the overall change. The cable remains part of the route. The interaction remains part of the pause. If the cable is replaced or removed, the behavior does not disappear. It relocates. Another surface, perhaps a wooden edge, nearby, or a different section of wiring begins to show similar marks. The structure of the behavior remains intact, even as the objects within it change. This continuity suggests that the behavior is anchored, not to specific materials, but to the conditions that those materials satisfy. Over longer periods, the environment itself may shift. Vegetation may grow or be removed. Buildings may be modified. New materials may be introduced. Each change alters the available set of surfaces. The behavior adapts by redistributing across this set, maintaining its function through changing contexts. The observable result: chewed wires, marked edges, worn surfaces, is a byproduct of this adaptation. It reflects the interaction between a persistent biological constraint and a variable environment. At no point does the behavior require a stable, ideal surface. It operates on what is present, selecting and reselecting based on accessibility and resistance. The cable in the alley is one instance within a broader pattern. As long as the conditions remain continuous tooth growth, the need for controlled wear, and the presence of suitable surfaces, the behavior continues. It does not resolve into a fixed endpoint. It cycles, adjusting to the environment as it changes, maintaining viability through repeated, localized actions. The grooves along the cable are not a final state. They are a record of ongoing interaction, small decisions made under constraint, repeated over time, leaving a visible trace where movement and material briefly intersect.